Hi there, it's June 20th and we're continuing our journey through the Acts of the Apostles, and we're in chapter 13 and we're reading from verses 16 through to verse 41. And here we have recorded one of Paul's only recorded sermons that he actually spoke. Here's good news, the good news according to Paul in that sense. He's speaking it in Pisidian Antioch, which is in the centre of Asia Minor. Having been in Cyprus and travelled from Pamphylia, he's now gone into the inland and he's found Jews and Gentiles meeting together, God-fearing Gentiles who probably are Jewish proselytes. They've become Jewish believers, but they're still Gentiles, and he's speaking to them together. Now, what's very interesting is as we look at Paul's preaching, he establishes the good news of Jesus right within the context of the story of Israel. So he starts with Abraham, Moses, he speaks about Samuel and Saul, and he particularly refers to David and the fact that Jesus is the fulfillment of the promises made to David, which were very important to Israel because he was to do with the unfolding of the kingdom. And so he now says that Jesus is the one that God has raised up, and he backs this up with a number of verses from the Psalms. And he says that it's interesting that he refers to those leaders of Jerusalem. He specifically points the finger at leaders in Jerusalem who have condemned Jesus, connecting that with the machinations of Pilate, the Roman governor. He's not painting all Jews with this Christ-killing libel. He's saying it's specifically the leaders in Jerusalem and Pilate who together connived to see Jesus executed, but God has raised him up from the dead. This is the key thing that Paul is proclaiming. Resurrection is key to his message, and he says we are witnesses of this. We've witnessed the risen Jesus, and now Jesus is offering life, forgiveness of sins particularly, and he refers back to John the Baptist pointing to Jesus as well. This is the one who John was saying would be the anointed one, the one whose shoes he wasn't worthy to undo. And this Jesus, by his resurrection, has justified everyone. He is the fulfillment of what God has promised. It's interesting to see here, as I say, Paul's summing up of his gospel and our seeing Paul's total message here, very much focused on the story of Israel, Jesus as the Jewish Messiah, his resurrection, and the forgiveness of sins, which is freeing them into the grace of God. May we also give this full gospel, this recognition that Jesus has come to rescue us, but he is also part of the fulfillment of that amazing story of promise, of covenant, which God has initiated. Have a very good June the 20th.